how many of the top 10 seeds on the women's single side fell before the round of 32?
This schedule is stupid, and they're planning on making it worse, if anything. I think, like, I know that more tennis means more money, and more tournaments get a share of that acclaim by holding, matches with more players and stuff like that. But like, you're pushing these people towards injury.
Crowds that come into Rome, compared to most of the other tournaments, really. Like, you see them, I've seen them staying there late till, like, I don't know, gone like 1, 2 a.m. and you've got like little sections of the crowd like spurring on one player, and like they're very unforgiving with like bad line calls or like players who maybe get a little bit wound up. Remember, like, Shapovalov, was it last year we talked about, when he completely had like a meltdown and the crowd just like absolutely got on his back. So I just think the statues are just symbolic for me of, like, I don't know, the kind of Colosseum type atmosphere that you get in some of the courts at Rome. Welcome back to the Getting Grip podcast. This time we are in the lovely Rome, probably one of the best places to find good food, I think, from what I've seen from the interviews.
We're not in Rome.
We're not in Rome, but no, mentally we're in Rome.
Yeah, but you said it like we're in Rome. Right, anyway, you carry on.
The tennis world is in Rome. Let's do that.
Yeah. We're not, just to clarify.
Okay, yeah, because, I don't know, this background makes it look like I'm in Rome, doesn't it? In this little box, which I'm in every week, which is my bedroom. But anyway, so, we're like halfway through, because these kind of Masters events, as has happened in Madrid, and it's happened in Miami and Indian Wells, it's like it spans a week and a half of like the main kind of draw. So we're sort of halfway through, and we've got kind of a few questions to delve into what's been going on at the moment and kind of the historical context of the Rome tournament. So we shall kick it off with the first question, which is, on the men's single side, who is, simply, the youngest winner ever of the Rome Masters? Your options are Rafael Nadal, Boris Becker, Bjorn Borg, or Novak Djokovic.
Interesting.
I feel like I make the questions harder for you. You feel sorry for me, but I don't feel sorry for you because you always get like 4 or 5.
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, you got your first 5 last week. I was quite proud of you. I'd finally leveled the questions, right for you.
About, yeah, it's like on the board games where you have like an age range. It's probably, for me, it's like 5+ or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, enough time wasting.
I feel like I've seen this statistic before for this specific question. So the youngest male winner in Rome, or is this the youngest male or female?
Male.
Just male. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Based on that, I do think it is Boris Becker, based on what I remember seeing. So I'm going to go with that. I mean, I know it'd be tempted to be like, oh, Rafa's probably the youngest on every clay surface, but he can't have every accolade. So I'm going to go with Boris Becker.
Final answer?
Yeah.
Get a grip. That is incorrect.
Really?
It is another name beginning with B. It's actually Bjorn Borg. So he won it at the age of 17 years and 11 months back in 1974, I think it was. I think we forget that he was in that era the dominant player on clay. He won 4 consecutive French Opens, which was, up until when Nadal showed up, that was like incredible, right? And I think he won 6 in total. But people tend to forget about that, since Nadal arrived. And actually, I think Nadal, the most consecutive French Opens he won was maybe like 4 or 5 as well, because he seemed to get like injured every now and again, right? Or like missed a tournament or something. So, but yeah, Nadal was 18 when he won Pro Masters. The ripe old age of 18.
Yeah, I was going to say ancient at that point.
Which is
Uh,
incredible, really.
so
But
I'm wondering why I thought it was Becker then, because I have seen that somewhere. So maybe it's not Rome. Maybe it was another Masters that he was maybe the youngest.
well, he was the
Or
youngest to win Wimbledon. He was 17 when he won Wimbledon,
yeah, no, there was a Masters as well. I remember there being a
probably.
statistic about that year that he won Wimbledon. It wasn't necessarily a shock that he won Wimbledon at being such a young age. It was more that he was building on quite a few successes in the year. It
Hmm.
was sort of a consistent breakthrough year. It wasn't just like the one tournament, like
Yeah,
some players in England at the moment. Let's not go there. Yeah. Yeah, it must have been
yeah.
different masters. Well, if anyone knows the masters that Boris Becker was the youngest at, please let me know because it's probably going to be a question in the future.
Yeah, there we go. That makes it easy for me. Yeah, I think Bjorn Borg did go on either that year or the next year. He won the French Open and he won Wimbledon as well. I think possibly in the same
Mm,
year, which again was that's a very rare feat even in the modern era of or what was the modern era of the big three. I think Nadal did it like
yeah.
once, possibly, and Federer might have done it once. Maybe Djokovic has done it once, but yeah, very difficult to do. Obviously, maybe a little slightly easier now because there's a slightly bigger gap, so there's a little bit more time for adjustment. But still, it's like going from one extreme to the other. Still, although again,
Yeah.
less so than it used to be because the surfaces in the grass are a little bit slower. So yeah, there we go. Second question. So this is probably something that you saw in the headlines at some point over the last few days. On the women's singles side, there's been a few seeds to fall. That sounds like I'm sort of talking about horticulture or something. But anyway, this is still tennis. So my question is, how many of the top 10 seeds on the women's single side fell before the round of 32, which would have been a couple of days ago?
Before the round of 32, so that was what, Sunday? That was yesterday. Oh no, I suppose it would have been Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, so a couple of days ago. So your options are
Yeah.
1, 3, 4, or 6.
So it's how many of the top 10 fell before then?
Yeah. So basically by Sunday.
Yeah.
So the first few rounds.
Just thinking. So I know of two, so it's not one. I know of two. Oh, three, because number three also went out. Um, this is a tough one. Can I have the options again?
Yeah, 1, 3, 4, or 6.
One, three, four, or six. Oh, I'm gonna say three because I can only think of three. Gonna say three.
Get a grip. Yeah, it is actually 6, which is rather incredible. I think I don't know what the highest number of seeds is to fall in like the first few rounds of a tournament, but I think that is going to be up there. 6 players gone by the
Very
round of
tough one.
32. So
Six of the top 10.
yeah, 6 of the top 10. So your likes
Okay.
of Goff,
Also,
Zachary, Pegula, Jabeur, Kasakina, all of those were gone,
oh,
and there must have been another one
I've not
as
paid
well
enough
in there.
attention then.
There you go.
Interesting.
So the interesting thing is, like we've talked about before, is we're often having these kind of masters events back to back, right? So I want to know, like,
Mm.
why do you think that we have had so many seeds fall? Is it just like a somewhat inherent kind of inconsistency on the women's tour? Because we have had tournaments
No, it's
before
the
where the seeds
schedule
fall,
is
or is it just the
stupid.
schedule?
The schedule is stupid, and then they're planning on making it worse. If anything, I think I know that more tennis means more money, and more tournaments get a share of that acclaim by holding matches with more players and stuff like that. But like you're pushing these people towards injuries, which isn't ideal, and you're pushing these people towards a lack of success. Because I mean, if I'd just come out of a Masters, the last thing I'd want to do, say I made a deep run, didn't even win it, is go the next week and play another one. So
Well, Sabalenka beat Swiatek in the final of Madrid, and then she lost in the first round
yeah,
of Rome.
yeah. I mean that's a clear sort of exhausted statement.
Yeah, I want to know like what the negotiations are like with the ATP and like these tournaments. Because surely, if you're Rome, like if you're the tournament director of Rome, you're not going to be happy that your tournament is starting like almost immediately after another Masters event previously, because it leaves the
Yeah.
likelihood of this happening. And then if you haven't got some of the best players still in the latter stages of your tournament, is that going to impact your viewing numbers and your audience and crowds and all that sort of stuff? Like,
Well, yeah.
feels like they're in a, I don't know, a slightly unfair position. But then when else can you fit it in the calendar?
Well, well, the reason that the calendar is set up the way it is at the moment is because it's geographically sensible. Like you don't want the players traveling too far and too wide too
Sometimes it
much.
is. Sometimes it isn't.
Sometimes that sort of stuff does happen. Sometimes it is a bit wrong. And again, the players will decide as well, like when there's multiple 250s and 500s on in a week, some of the players will choose maybe to go further because they prefer the tournament, that is further, etc. But like again, like what do you prioritize here? Do you prioritize the quality of the tournaments, or do you prioritize limited traveling and stuff like that? Do you prioritize um like the schedule just based on location? It's really tough to do. So it's just for me, I just think there should be less, or perhaps a cap on how many each player plays in a year. That's probably the place I would go. They all have the same tournaments, but each player can only play X amount of tournaments or something like that. 9 Masters, maybe they can only play 7. Let's say that, and then they pick and choose the ones that are better for them, because I think that would leave pressure and it would be more tactical. But again, just
Mm.
a literal suggestion in the moment.
The money talks, doesn't it? Really.
Well, yeah.
Like, no one's gonna want to, I don't know, have their tournament less favored than other tournaments, or have some of the bigger players play at some and not at theirs, and then also other players that lower down the tour don't really have that luxury, I guess, of being able to pick
Yeah.
and choose as much because they need the money. So it's a tough one, as we always come back to this, but everyone wants their piece of the pie, right? So, okay, third question, another historical one on the men's side. So I want to know, out of the following players, who did not defend their Rome Masters title. So who wasn't able to win it back to back. Your options are Andre Agassi, Novak Djokovic, Thomas Muster, or Rafael Nadal.
Interesting. Oh God, I don't really know where to go on this one. Yeah, I got to have a think about.
These are historical ones, are a little bit more difficult than normal. Thought I'd stretch you today.
Well, it's difficult as well because it's not necessarily the sort of thing that you keep an eye on. Let's put it that way. Because yeah, you think okay, yeah, if they've won like loads in a row, for example, then obviously you have a little bit more of a thought process about that. But yeah, with some of them, it's a bit more interesting. So which ones haven't managed to back it up?
Well, yes, only one of them. So
Oh yeah,
Agassi,
only one of them
Djokovic,
hasn't
Nadal, or
managed to back it
Muster.
up. I refuse to believe Nadal. I just refuse to believe that. Um, and I'm pretty sure I know Djokovic has backed up his his Rome Masters wins because and the reason I say that is because I remember them talking about will he make it a third in a row when Andy Murray won it subsequently during his incredible 2016 year. Um, So that must mean he did 14 and 15. So I wouldn't say that. Who are the other two options? It was Agassi and
Muster. Or Muster. Don't know how you pronounce it.
Muster. Muster.
He was he was a player in the 90s mainly. 80s, 90s.
I mean, I don't remember. I remember Agassi being consistent at a Grand Slam level, but again, it wasn't really a time that I was watching a lot of tennis. A bit young. My gut feeling is Agassi, but that's not served me well today. I'm gonna go with Agassi, but I don't think I'm right.
That is actually correct. Well done.
God.
Well, must have probably felt like a bit of a left field name, right? So you're thinking, well, there must be a reason that he's in there, surely.
There must have been a reason, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Well done.
There was a better way of doing that joke.
At least you're still awake. Yeah, Agassi, he won it in, I think, 2002. But again, like most of his Masters titles, almost all of them were hardcourt. So actually, Rome, that one Rome title was the only Masters event that he won on clay. And then the rest were hard and a couple were carpet. But so because I remember him, he wasn't much of he was still obviously a very good player, but he wasn't like his strength was definitely not on the clay. It was definitely being a somewhat hardcore specialist.
Well, you could argue that Agassi was one of these early days back of the court dominating players.
Yeah, I suppose. And he didn't really I mean a lot of them didn't hit with loads of topspin, but right, he was pretty flat the way he hit the ball until, as we get towards the late 90s, I suppose, into the noughties, and then topspin becomes more of a thing, especially on clay. And then obviously then it becomes the reason why Nadal wins all his French Opens is pretty much the amount of spin and power he can generate on the forehand side. Because obviously on clay you've got more time to run around the ball and dictate on your forehand side if that happens, to have an extreme amount of topspin, which Nadal's did. So yeah, I just thought that was interesting. Sometimes you get like a player like Muster, who was more of a clay court, not specialist, but he was stronger on the clay. This name that you wouldn't have heard of, but he was able to win back-to-back Masters titles on clay. So you do kind of get some instances of that. Okay, so question number 4. So this one's a bit more of a sort of general historical kind of question.
Rub your hands together when you're asking a question.
I don't know why I did that.
It just looks evil.
You'll enjoy this question. Like Mr. Burns.
Now, are we? Nice. I love that we thought of that at the same time.
Yeah. So it might actually be quite an easy question. What I want to know is which of the courts at the Foro Italico complex is surrounded by statues. So this is quite a unique sort of court in the tennis world in general. So your options are Moretti, Pietrangeli, I'm going to try and do it in my best Italian accent, Schiavone, or Centrale.
Okay. Oh God, I thought I didn't know where to begin on the last question. This one's a bit rougher.
Do you know the stadium names generally?
Not really, no.
I mean, well, there aren't really that many. There's like 2 or 3 stadium courts in inverted commas.
Yeah.
So I've thrown you off with this one. It's not a question about players.
It's not a tennis question. This is my problem. Oh.
You've got to broaden your horizons.
Say the courts again.
Moretti, Pietrangeli, Schiavone, or Centrale. I feel like you can definitely rule like one of them out.
Or maybe Moretti, because that's just beer.
Birra Moretti.
Was one of them Schiavone?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna say that. I have no clue.
Wow. I've got him here.
Oh, this is gonna be a bad week.
This is just going to ruin your week, your whole week. Just this one little quiz. Is that your final answer?
Yeah.
Get it correct. It is
Oh,
Pietrangeli, the name that I can't really pronounce properly. Named after Nicola Pietrangeli, who was arguably Italy's greatest ever tennis player.
okay.
Back in, I think it was like the 50s or 60s. But yeah, I don't know. What's interesting about this court is that what is interesting about this court actually? You tell me. Why is it different to all the other ones?
It's got statues around it.
Yes.
What are you talking about? I don't know. We've established. Right. So you're asking me to explain something that you have very clearly shown that I don't know. That's just
Just
mean.
rubbing it in. So, yeah, but I don't know. What do you? It just makes it interesting. The whole thing of having these marble statues of basically like different Olympic sports around the outside of this court. So I think we always talk about Masters events trying to be unique, and have their own kind of selling points, right? And I think this is kind of something that is unique to Rome, not just the fact there's statues, but the kind of almost like Colosseum type atmosphere that can be generated, not just on this court as well, but on the Centrale court as well, with the really steep stands that they have, and the kind of type of crowds that you bring in as well. I think the atmosphere that you have in Rome is quite unique compared to some of the other tournaments. They're a lot more unforgiving, these crowds that come into Rome, compared to most of the other tournaments, really. Like I've seen them staying there late till like, I don't know, gone like 1, 2 a.m. and you've got like little sections of the crowd like spurring on one player, and like they're very unforgiving with like bad line calls or like players who maybe get a little bit wound up. Remember like Shapovalov, was it last year we talked about when he completely had like a meltdown and the crowd just like absolutely got on his back. So I just think the statues are just symbolic for me of like, I don't know, the kind of Colosseum type atmosphere that you get in some of the courts at Rome, like completely different from the other tournaments. I don't know what you think about that.
I mean, it depends. So this is me thinking about world history and when a lot of the statue-based things in Rome were built. If you're, I don't know if you know when the tennis courts and those statues would have been built, but there is a potential it would have been done again. A lot of that stuff in Rome, for example, was done during the fascist era. So I don't know if they are. So don't quote me on this at all. But again, it may also be a hallmark of that, which obviously is not the greatest thing. But well, there are other countries where it's worse. So yeah, I don't know. Just it's interesting from that perspective. Obviously, it's important to have history, no matter whether it's good or bad. But yeah, I'm glad you're likening it to something that people see more favorably as well, like the idea of the Colosseum feel. Like yeah, that's a great arena, effectively an ancient arena that if you can replicate that in any way in any sport, then yeah, of course you're going to draw crowds in and keep them there.
Yeah, I think it was they originally built in the 20s or 30s, maybe it was even before that.
Era.
But like, was it Mussolini? Is that his name?
Yeah,
his like
Mussolini.
The Foro Mussolini, so the Mussolini's Forum or whatever. That was like what it was called initially. But yeah, I guess you got to acknowledge history, good or bad. Apart from like, when was it, like a few years ago when people started trying to like tear down statues and stuff and like kind of almost try and disown your history, whether it's good or bad. I think it's got to be acknowledged either way, right? Like we're not the same as we were. Like the whole point is that we've learned over time, and like progress as a society, right? So you can still acknowledge that even if it's, you're not proud of it or whatever. I think, again, it's just a unique point to this tournament versus some of the other tournaments. Okay, we'll go on to the final question, which is based around the... Well, now I'm asking this question now that Alcaraz is out. It doesn't feel like it has quite the same, I don't know, weight to it, but I'll ask it anyway.
I know, Alcaraz lost there.
So everyone's been talking about that Djokovic and Alcaraz are in the same tournament. Ooh, how exciting it would be that they could have played against each other. Obviously now that won't happen. This rivalry that's been kind of hyped up. It's interesting because, I want to know this much hype rivalry. How many times have they actually played against each other? So how many times have Novak and Carlos actually played against each other? Your options are 0, 1, 2, or 3. So it's obviously
obviously I know it's very few times, and I think, if I remember correctly, it was just last year in Madrid.
Final answer?
I can't remember any other times. So I'm going to say 1.
That is correct.
Oh, thank God. I couldn't have dealt with getting 1 out of 5. I couldn't have done it, Ben. That would have been it for me.
Podcast is shut down, sorry. Yes, you're right. The only time they have played was last year in Madrid, that famous tournament when Alcaraz beat both Djokovic and Nadal in the same tournament. So for all this kind of, I don't know, hyping up, maybe this is what's adding to it, actually, the fact that we really haven't seen how it's going to play out. Like, one match is not enough to kind of judge how they kind of weigh up against each other. Like, at that point last year, I think because Novak had been, because of the vaccination ban and all that sort of stuff, or him being barred from countries, he hadn't really played a lot of tournaments in the build-up, so he wasn't necessarily as prime as we would hope coming into a match like that. So we want to see it where he's had a few tournaments to build up to it, and like the French Open, that would be exciting, right? Especially if Nadal's not there, or he's not kind of playing in a full capacity that we'd like to see. That is, I think that's one of the main matches that tennis fans are really getting excited about. A best of 5 set on clay, Carlos's preferred surface. I don't know, how would you see that play out if they did, let's say they came up against each other in like the semi-finals or the final of the French Open? Where are the key matchups for you in that rivalry?
I think before today, I probably would have handed Alcaraz the benefit here, the benefit of the doubt in that rivalry, and that's just because I think actually I think he's doing a better job than Novak is at Novak's own game almost, and that's the outrageous agility to get everything back and being an all-round excellent hitter. He's just sort of, it doesn't matter what part of the court you're trying to pick him off at, like it doesn't work. We've talked about his mentality as well before. Like, Djokovic sometimes, I think, is a victim of a bit of negativity on his own part, with that unstoppable, brutal mentality that he has, which is brilliant. It's seen him through so much, and he can use it so positively. But sometimes I think he falls victim to himself a little. And it's only for moments, but that's still moments. Whereas Alcaraz, I've not really seen that yet. He always seems positively motivated. How genuine that is, I don't know. But because, for example, there were matches where he was easily beating someone. I can't remember when this was. This was a while ago. But there was a match where he was easily beating someone, but he still looked absolutely on fire, like he was in some sort of final or something like that. I don't know how sustainable that is for, say, years, for example, in terms of mentality, because you must get a bit tired of being that hyped all the time in every match and every point you play. So yeah, I don't know, but it could go the other way. Djokovic isn't in the best form at the moment, and well, now Alcaraz is showing a bit of weakness into the season, so it would be hard to tell.
Yeah, but he is still young, so I feel like you do just have that a bit more energy anyway when you're younger, because
Oh yeah,
this is all still pretty new to him anyway. Like he's realistically, it's been like a year of him being prominent on the tour, if that. So
yeah,
I don't know. He's still got that mental freshness in most matches, and also just like that ability to probably recover a little bit quicker as well. And
yeah.
I don't know. People still forget that he's literally only just turned 20, right? So the fact that he's lost, like, I don't know, yesterday or whatever, fairly early on in the tournament. Yes, it's surprising because he's been playing so well, but again, he is still very young. I think because everyone's just drawing parallels with like Nadal when he was that age, and Nadal was like crazily consistent already at that age.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that he's not going to lose the odd surprise match or whatever, especially in these early few years. And I guess maybe that is a mental thing as well, right? I don't know whether he's tired or whether there's just a little letdown in his mentality. But it's something that he can continue to work on. And I don't think that necessarily means he can't go far in the French Open. I just think he's still young and he's still learning, right? We've got to give him a little bit of breathing space. But yeah, I think
as we should with all of our younger players,
yes.
And as the media should be with certain female players as well.
And who might that be?
Wow, I mean, it's not exactly something that's a surprise shock answer, but yeah.
Yeah, I think we just need to remember that like these are just like almost kids still.
Yeah,
and like
they're very human. As much as they're amazing at what they do, they're still human.
Yeah, well, we like to build people up, right, into these like
a god of sport.
Yeah, symbols of like perfection or whatever. And then as soon as like one little thing goes wrong or whatever, just absolutely tear them down, like back to the bottom of the pile. It's just brutal, really. But that's human nature, I guess. But yeah, so I think ultimately in a best of 5 on clay, I still think Novak would have the upper hand because I think mentally he's that bit more mature that I think he could still.
Oh, he'd still have so much more experience.
Yeah, and he wouldn't have maybe quite the dips that maybe Alcaraz would have within the match because it only takes a couple of games to dip off and then that's a set gone. And I think these top guys who've done it year in year out, they just know how to sort of manage those moments or recognize those moments. So yeah, I'd still give him the edge in that respect. But who knows? It's still exciting. Yeah, let us know kind of your predictions for the rest of the tournament. Obviously, the draw has kind of opened up. Well, you say opened up on the women's side. There's one main player that's there. It's opened up for her, but not for anyone else. And then on the men's side, obviously, Alcaraz now going out. Is Novak the favourite? Or because he hasn't had loads of tournaments, maybe there's other players that could still sneak in there. And obviously, if you've enjoyed it, give us a follow on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen. And on YouTube, like it, share it around, and subscribe. And we'll see you in the next one.